Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Bradley Wolfe, and I'm going to be going over Introduction to Global Studies textbook. I like this textbook. It really takes a political science and a little bit of a geography approach to global studies, but it does a great job of going over many of the important topics within the realm. It's a really nice overview. So I'm starting with chapter one, the introduction. That's what this video is about, where they just kind of provide an overview of global studies, what it is and how it relates to other disciplines and other terms. So global studies is a comprehensive research area aimed to understand the effects of globalization on societies, cultures, and environments worldwide. I teach communication studies as my main discipline, so I look at really those cultures, those connections, how people come together. And I really love global citizenship within global studies, so how people come together to solve the world's problems. So the global studies classes and people who major in global studies are really looking at critical issues across the globe that influence their lives, their communities, and everything around the world. Some of these issues may be specific to regions, so kind of regional global studies, and some of them just affect all of us as global citizens and as people who exist in society. So there's a quote here from Edward Said explained coexistence with the preservation of difference. And so really looking at how we can appreciate that human diversity and coexist with each other while allowing ourselves to be individuals as well. I think that individuality is really important, that we have very diverse cultures throughout the globe and different ways of approaching things, but we can still work with each other and alongside each other. So we're going to just cover some introductory elements here in this lecture, and I'll make lectures for the other chapters as well. So 1.2 here, how did the field of global studies develop? It's been going back a while, right? They say here, really, with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, more colleges have been introducing this thing called global studies as possibly a major. They've also focused on international studies, which is connected to global studies, but a little bit different. But there's been a lot of growth. So really looking at how we're connected across the globe and how, we're all involved in these global issues. They affect all of us, especially with globalization, the internet. There's more and more connections. Sometimes we feel closer together to people all around the world. And that's kind of how this global perspective is very important. I like playing video games. So you can play video games with people all over the world and stay connected on a device and playing alongside each other. So it's very interesting how we can instantly communicate and connect with other people and build those relationships. But also we can impact through global trade networks, politics, different policies that get put forward impact all of us, right? We look at a variety of different issues within global studies, which other chapters cover, but this is just the broad overview. So global, and in terms of global studies, denotes a broader or more comprehensive perspective in the world, whereas international studies programs, they more involve courses that look at the interactions between two or more states. So it's not necessarily the whole global perspective, it's more just specific interactions that may be there. So that's the difference between those two. We also can look at area studies, kind of like international studies, where it's more focused on an academic approach. So area study could be kind of Latin American studies, Middle Eastern studies, African studies, right? There are a lot of different ways to study, regions and ways to split up the world geographically and culturally. What are those cultural connections that we look at? I recently did some coursework involving Indigenous studies. And so some of it was looking at Indigenous studies as North America. Some of it was more focused on regions within those Indigenous regions. So it could be more the Plains region or the Northwest region of Indigenous studies. So it can be split up as broad or as focused as they want to, as they're discussing. There's going to be those cultural connections and subcultures within those regions, but those cultural regions have a shared language, religion, heritage normally, or there could be diversity within that region that's maybe interesting to study as well. There's also a field of international relations, which really focus on political engagements among states, centered on diplomacy and foreign policy considerations. So really international is at two or more states, and it's a subfield of political science. So the people who wrote this textbook are mostly political scientists and one geographers, so you may be able to see those connections there. But in global studies, it's an interdisciplinary field. You can take any perspective you want with it. So you may agree with the framework presented in the textbook, or you may disagree with it. You may have your other perspective. And there's also transnational studies, which focuses on the movement of people, ideas, and goods across state boundaries and cultural regions. So really, the question is, does it cross those national borders? And is it looking across kind of transnational commerce? It could be, it could be, they talk about terrorism that's transnational, a variety of different ways to look at it. Migration that's transnational, how people move from one region to another. So again, here's a breakdown of it, like little pyramid. Global studies is the broad overview. Then it splits international studies and international relations. And then under international studies, it's area studies and cultural regions, which I have a lot of interest in, right? I teach intercultural communication as well. So that's more my very area of interest and passion, but also like the global citizenship and the broad view of it as well. And then under international relations, there's that transnational studies. So I'm not as focused on international relations or transnational studies that political scientists would be. I'm more towards the international studies side. But again, this textbook is written by a lot of political scientists, so you'll be able to get both of those perspectives in good shakes, right? In a good amount here. So distinguishing global from transnational. So how are they the same and how are they different? An example here talks about global warming. One of the chapters will talk more about the environment, but global warming is defined as the heating of the planet through rising greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere. So this is global because it affects everybody on Earth. If you look back through history, it has changed over time. The global environment, the Earth has gone through colder phases and warmer phases. So some of this is definitely natural changes in the environment, whereas they're more focused on global warming as a human caused phenomenon. So we can look at that through either of those perspectives. But that's global warming. It's global, right? It affects everybody. Whereas acid rain is a type of pollution. So it's toxic rain that would affect a specific region. Toxic generally being derived from burning coal, and it's considered a transnational environmental pollution problem because it affects a nation and then maybe neighboring states, right, where that weather system is connected. We can also see, I visited California, and I was there, and there was a bunch of smog, and it was just really gross outside. I'm just like, what's going on here? We looked it up, and it was smog from China that went across the Pacific Ocean. So that's transnational studies, right? It hit specific regions that kind of that ocean region or that wider Pacific region. They impact each other, even though they're not geographically very close together. Those weather systems can still impact each other. So a little bit about the environment. So there's some discernment between what's international, what's transnational, and what's global. It certainly has those academic perspectives or buckets that can be used, but it's not just for academics. It also can be for policymakers. So it talks about terrorism could be a global phenomenon. It talks about the environment. It talks about different regions coming together. So this is talking about, the UN Office of Counterterrorism, where member states are working together to prevent future terrorist attacks. And global studies will talk about a lot of those multinational organizations. So the United Nations, NATO, talks about the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, so part of the United Nations. So there are a lot of those large groups where people are coming together, countries are coming together to try and solve global problems. And again, that will be further in the curriculum, but just a little introduction here. Then this section talks about globalizing the curricula, trends in higher education. I'm a teacher. I'm interested in this stuff. You may not be as much. This textbook was written by the California State University system, some community colleges within that specifically. And they were just talking here, there's a lot of different, again, each of these campuses have some programs in global studies, and they take different perspectives. So it could be more focused on global studies, interdisciplinary studies, could be just liberal studies with a global studies track. I teach in the Minnesota State system, right? So on my campus at Ridgewater College, we have a global studies certificate that's a part of it. So we have our introduction to global studies, intercultural communication, which I also teach, and then some electives, just global electives within that. And that's our global studies certificate. So we're not as much of the political scientist approach. But if you look at other campuses, if you wanted to go major in this and transfer to another college, Bemidji State University, they have a global studies major that really focuses on geography. Metro State focuses, it's more interdisciplinary, kind of leaning towards political science. So again, it depends on how the program, it's a newer field, right? Some of these fields like communication studies could go back to ancient Greece and Rome, right? In higher education goes back, over 100 years when it started being formed and kind of breaking off from English into its own separate discipline. Whereas global studies is fairly new. It talked about getting started in the 90s in higher education as a field of study and really blooming over the past few decades, but a very relatively short amount of time. So we'll continue to see how this develops and how it may break off and these different approaches to global studies, how they may conflict or contrast with each other. So this next section, 1.3, is the essence of global studies. So global studies studies the effects of globalization. So we really look at globalization as a main concept within global studies. It can be defined different ways, but it has three main terms here that the textbook wants you to understand. So first is connectivity. So it's defined as the characteristic, condition, or capacity of being linked or interconnected, right? We're all connected to each other across the globe, and especially with technology, right? We've seen as technology has changed over the years, the written word, trains, planes, automobiles, now the internet, and phone connections, different ways of communicating with each other, being connected. We're getting more and more ever connected with each other. So connectivity is very important within global studies. Next is interdependence. So it's a condition where two or more entities, individuals, or systems rely on each other. So we're interdependent and really linked through many ways. It can be travel. I like traveling, so I've traveled internationally. We can look at how knowledge spreads, right? How knowledge is created and spread, and oftentimes knowledge has some barriers around language. So I speak English. A lot of other people around the world speak English, but I don't have as ready access to Russian text or Chinese text or knowledge that's being created unless someone translates it for me. But we definitely have interdependence on those translators to connect us to each other, even in international diplomacy. If the president goes and meets with somebody, a leader of another country, they usually have translators, right? And oftentimes, unless they both speak a common language, they're going to have a translator there. So there's going to be some interdependence. But in global studies, we look at global warming that affects all of us, and what we do here in the United States can impact people all over the world as well. We can look at migration, so the policies that are set up, whether you're welcoming immigrants, whether you're doing policies that pushes immigrants away or gets people to migrate from one area to another. We look at natural disasters can impact that migration. We can look at commerce, so how goods maybe come to us more cheaply because they're created in places with a lower cost of living, so the workers get paid less, and then you have to transport it across large areas. So in the United States, we're consumers of a lot of goods that come from all over the world where they have cheaper labor and they're brought to us. So there's that interdependence. If everything was created in the United States, and some people, there's definitely that Made in America movement where people want things made in the United States, but it's going to cost more because we have different labor laws, we have different standards of living, we different costs for goods. It costs a lot more to live in the United States than it costs to live in other places, but there's that interdependence. So lastly, connectivity, interdependence, and integration. So integration's understood as this shape, synchronize, or merge into a functional or cohesive entirety. So integrating, how are we working together, and how are these processes kind of firmed up? We're interdependent, and these relationships get firmed up over time. You may break them off, you may create new ones, but a lot of them are going to stay intact, right? A lot of them are going to stay connected over time. Again, they'll change, but there's that integration that we're relying on each other. And if we completely shut off trade with China from the United States, that's going to disrupt a lot of things. If we were just shut it down completely, it's going to be very disruptive because we're integrated with them, where there's some interdependence there and we're connected. And we can look at that places all over the world. There's connectivity, interdependence, and integration. So again, I kind of went over this detailed, elaborated in my own words here. The next key term here is globalization, refers to the concurrent manifestation of universalism and particularism. So they look at McDonald's, right? McDonald's is a global brand, but it's localized in a different way. In India, they don't eat meat, right? The cow is sacred, and many of the people's religion there. There's a few different religions in India, but they, on the whole, aren't going to eat the cow, right? They're not going to eat beef. But in the United States, it's known, right? The Big Mac, right? The burger is a big thing for McDonald's. So it's localized there through localization. They offer more chicken products, so because they do eat chicken, or they'll even serve more vegan products there for folks who don't eat meat. We see this picture here of Ahala, the Micorabia. So again, doing it in the Middle East, of offering again a different good. How is it going to be the same, but how is it going to be different? So recognized throughout over the world. I remember when I studied in England, we went to McDonald's and the food tasted differently. I'm like, this is McDonald's. I know McDonald's, right? I should be able to like this food. It was good food. It was really good food. It was less greasy and it was just very different. It was I think it was higher quality in some ways, but it wasn't what I was expecting exactly. And so that's interesting how products change. So if we look at kind of the commercialization of society and a lot of things, globalization often refers to those more economic concepts across the world. We also see this. It talks about sushi and how it's not just commerce, but it's also food and how food changes throughout the world as it's adapted to different palates, to different cultural norms. So it's traditionally a Japanese dish, but it can be purchased and eaten in many major cities around the world. It's even served at gas stations now, right? You can get gas station sushi, although I don't know that I would recommend that. But it's been integrated worldwide. And I've gone to the Mall of America recently, and I've noticed more and more Japanese stores popping up with Japanese products because that those cultural perspectives and goods are becoming popularized in the United States. We also see K-pop, which comes from Korea, being very much popularized in the United States. So some of those East Asian cultures are being infused into the United States, and some people really appreciating and participating in that subculture. And again, it comes to the United States in different ways. I've also seen more grocery stores with specific cultural foods. So there's the Asia Mall in the Twin Cities. I think there's another one going there. So a lot of interesting new things popping up. Instead of just having one, American brand, now there's more diffusion of the culture and how things are being interpreted differently. So it fits in with the United States while still having those cultural elements from other countries. So covering a lot of information here. Very interesting stuff. I love this. Next is defining globalization. So it talks about the acceleration of the interconnectivity, the interdependence, the integration process. And it's really a process. It's not necessarily a condition that it's always changing. Globalization is always changing, right? How we're connected to each other. It's not always the same thing. Every year, every month, things change, right? Things are changing constantly. And globalization, as technology changes and the advent of AI, we're seeing that change a lot. It's having impact on the environment, which is a global issue. I know there's a lot of local communities pushing back against AI data centers at the time when I'm making this video, but who knows how it's going to be in a year from now, right? AI has been changing so fast. You don't know how things are going to change or adapt or be accepted or not accepted. So it also talks about globalism when the world is characterized being a state of interdependence across continents with the flow of goods, services, monies, ideas, and information. There's also globality, which is the intricate worldwide economic, political, cultural, environmental interrelations and movements. And then there's a global consciousness, a global mindset, where it talks about the welfare of individuals, across the world is gaining more attention. Now, these are theories, these are ideas, these are perspectives and viewpoints which we can view the world. But where we're looking at specific situations, they may not be held as true. So that's the important thing with theories. It's not just a truth. It is a truth, not the truth. That's the difference. So we're looking at different perspectives that we can look at. And especially when we're looking at the issues throughout this textbook, we'll be able to see things from a global perspective, but also a local perspective. There's some issues we may come across in another part of the world that you may never heard of before, may be new to you. And so that's part of how we can stay connected with our fellow citizens and fellow humans across the world. And animals and nature and all that too can be fit within global studies. And some of the things may very much resonate you. There may be an issue that you care a lot about. There may be other things which you have a different perspective on, and that's okay, right? It's okay to have different perspectives on issues, and that's just part of the diversity that we hold throughout the world. So it talks about the idea of maybe a world government, kind of the United Nations. A lot of countries like their independence. I don't know how much that is just theoretical versus realistic. A world federalism, so the objective of establishing a world government. Again, political scientists wrote this textbook. I don't see that happening anytime soon. There's also talks about cosmopolitan governments, where embracing the concept of people holding multiple citizenships, being affiliated with multiple different governments or states. That's certainly something that can happen. Then there's also mass migration. So that is something that happens. It's more definitely happening in our society. People moving from one geographic region to another. There's a whole chapter on migration, so we'll get to that in more depth. But a lot of times people are going because of natural disaster, terrorism, poverty, and they're seeking out new opportunities where there are a lot of jobs, where there's more safety and security, where there's just a pathway to get there, right? We can look at by land, by boat, whatever it may be. There's certainly a lot of migrants coming from Africa to Europe. That's been a big issue and discussion on how to handle that, how to welcome new people, but also what are some of the limits of that welcoming. And in the United States as well. A lot of people coming from Latin America, some of them coming from Asia by boat or overstaying visas. So they may come here legally, but overstay their legal welcome in the country. And so that's been a big topic of conversation as well, what to do with these people who, some of them, come from all over the world, and how to handle that migration, and what are appropriate steps to take, whether you support it, whether you don't support it. Those are conversations that are being had, but it's how, like in the United States, we're being affected by the poverty and the drug issues in Latin America, by many of the immigrants trying to create a better, safer future for their families. So we're being impacted by that as well, our communities. In some ways that's positive because it's new workers helping the workforce, especially if they're coming here legally, they can work right away. They can be a part of our country and contributing to our communities in many good ways. If they're undocumented, it's going to be a little bit harder to find a job and to create that stability in your life. Certainly there's some tension on whether people support that or not. But again, it's how we're impacted, how our communities are impacted by it. So again, it talks about how we're just really connected, shared fates. We have a shared fate across the world with many different issues that this textbook's going to come across. So how do we approach global studies? You don't need to be a global studies major to take a global studies class. Try and make it, this textbook is trying to make it very welcoming for anybody if you just want to take one class and understand it a little bit better. Many of us have experienced the COVID-19 pandemic that has reached across nations and continents. So that's health. That's more of a global health perspective and how we're connected, that these diseases can spread very rapidly across the world. Sometimes they're more contained to a specific region, but again, they may put barriers in place to make sure it doesn't continue to spread. But like COVID-19, it just spread, right? It spread very rapidly. So from that global health perspective, we're connected to each other as humans because we have similar biology that allows diseases to go from human to human. So that's something to consider as well. And there's, again, another chapter entirely about global health. So again, different things to think about. Global studies is multidisciplinary, so it incorporates multiple perspectives, concepts, frameworks, and methodologies to study complex global phenomena. It's really additive that we can add more and more perspectives. Again, I teach communication studies normally. That's my discipline of focus. I also have a degree in social responsibility, which was more based, in sociology, but it also was interdisciplinary. But it's bringing these different disciplinary perspectives together to understand issues. So multidisciplinary is first of all, then interdisciplinary. So you're aligning connections across the disciplines to create a unified and cohesive field of study. So it's really interactive between those visions, whereas multidisciplinary is taking on different lenses to view the issues. Interdisciplinary is really bringing them together. And then lastly, transdisciplinary is when scholars embed a perspective, concept, framework, methodology from one discipline into another. So it's really elevating them, bringing them together to create something new. So instead of just integrating them, interdisciplinary to bring them together, you're creating something new. To me, these specific terminology, not a big difference, right? Especially for a 101 kind of introductory to global studies class. Just know that this brings different frameworks into focus. So we're going to look at things from different perspectives. Again, the authors of the textbook are really about political scientists and geography. That's where they come from, but they also value other perspectives that are brought into the conversation. So when reading about various global issues, problems, or challenges, it's good to be able to see things from different perspectives. So here it talks about global food disruption and the food supply. So it has a graph here about different dimensions. So we could look at it through child mortality. So under 5 mortality, how long people are living, especially those young children that are born. We could look at child undernutrition. We could look at the inadequate food supply, right? There are a lot of different lenses that we can bring to the same issue. Global hunger is going to be discussed further in chapter 8. But again, just as an example, there's different lenses we can take to examine the same issue. We can use different academic perspectives. We can use different theories. We can focus on different parts of the issue, right? We can look at again, child mortality, undernutrition. We can look at the food supply. A lot of different perspectives to take on it. And I teach at Ridgewater College is a rural community college. So I think that's, again, we look around a lot of agriculture. So agriculture perspective may be very interesting if you grew up in a farmer family. Just understanding that food supply and those dynamics at play. In the United States, we have pretty strong food supplies. Our farmers export to a lot of places in the world, but other areas of the world they don't make enough food because they don't necessarily have the advanced agriculture equipment that we do in the United States. They certainly don't have the funds for it. So they're often farming by hand, which is more labor intensive, and that's preventing them from having the same food supply that we do. And maybe with investments in agriculture, they talk about, people are pro or against GMOs, genetically modified seeds, and whether they're going to help or be hurtful. People have different perspectives on that, but we can look a variety of perspectives on why there is global hunger. We could also look at food trade, overconsumption. Again, a lot of things to think about. Then intersectionality is another concept which is taken into account in global studies. So how various systems and inequality can converge to create distinct and intertwined outcomes. So instead of looking at global issues, this really looks at the people involved and some classifications of the people. So it can be talking about race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, class, religion, disability, but it's also a variety of things outside of that as well. So we look at issues in the Middle East, like Israel. There's Jewish people and there is Islamic people, and they have different perspectives on the ownership of the land. So how does religion impact the politics and policies, and how other countries support or oppose each side of it? Right, the United States often is, federally has been supporting Israel for a very long time, since this country of Israel was created after World War II. And then we can look at the genocide that happened, the Holocaust and all of that, and how that impacted the creation of Israel and, in that area, and also look at history going much further back as to why that place was chosen. But again, a variety of different perspectives can be used and classifications on all sorts of issues. So this textbook will get into a variety of other issues as well. So it talks about a little bit about a matrix of oppression of people having different things. It talks about the global north and global south, which is more unique to global studies, a little bit of geography. So thinking about, and again, it's not just like the equator being the global north versus south, but again, more of the economic, mobility, global north, United States, Europe. Sometimes China is considered south. Now it's kind of creating north because it's becoming more advanced. So there's a variety of different perspectives, of ways we can split things up and view things with the different layers of oppression. If we want to look at oppression, again, that's one of the lenses we can take. But certainly some issues that's not going to be as relevant. So it depends on what we're talking about and how we're approaching it. This next section talks about the organization of the book. You can certainly read through this if you want to, but it's split into different sections. So the introduction to global studies, dimensions, experiences, and future challenges. So it has 12 chapters to the textbook, and this is the first one. I'll make videos to cover these other ones as well. And then the last one here is the references that they used in order to create the textbook. And there's a lot of different authors on this text as well. You can see up here, they put in a lot of time to create it. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it has 8 authors listed. They put a lot of time into this textbook, and I really appreciate their work to make this open and accessible. I'm a big fan of open education resources, and we can look at that from a global perspective, right? Locally, it makes knowledge more affordable for students, but especially in developing areas around the world that want access to this knowledge. They may not be able to afford a textbook at all. They may not have a lot of resources. So making it open and available for people across the world, as long as you can speak English, again, that would be one of the barriers, but this is available to them. So I'm a big fan of OERs, but that's the first chapter, right? Just introducing global studies, some of the broad general concepts, and the future chapters are going to delve more into specific issues, which may be a little bit more interesting. This is just kind of a bit academic, right? A bit academic in perspective, but we'll get into some more interesting specific issues and dive into those as we continue with the book. Thanks for watching, and I hope you watch the next videos as well if you find my little textbook lectures useful.